Good morning. This is Tim Stewart. I'm president at Visual Decisions, and we're here today to talk about how to manage real-time variable costs within your operations. First question is, why focus on real-time variable costs at all and manage them? When I first started Visual Decisions, I was working with a customer where I was putting together dashboards for their operations. In talking with the chief operating officer, I asked what he wanted his plant managers to be able to see on their dashboards. His response was really interesting. He said that he wanted them to see everything they needed to know if they were winning or losing that day, but nothing more than that. There could be drill downs and other reports with additional details and so forth, but he wanted them to be laser focused on winning each hour, each shift, and each day. As we were talking about what it meant to be winning, it quickly became clear that what really mattered, of course, is the profitability of the operations for that day. As a lean guru, he suggested that I forget about all the overhead allocations performed by finance and really just focus on the costs that were controllable by the plant. He wanted a crystal clear view at a glance of whether the plants were making a profit in real time and why that was the case. The next big reason for focusing on those real-time variable costs is agility. Supply chain and labor issues over the past 18 months have caused a really increased focus on agility for businesses. To some extent, there's a trade-off between efficiency and agility. Companies have been very focused on efficiency for a long time, and they've really reduced kind of the shock absorbers that a business can put in place to be able to handle disruptions. For instance, inventory, whether it's raw material or finished goods or even work in process, or excess capacity, being able to absorb some overtime or increase demand, or being able to shift production from one place to another based on different disruptions that happen, can allow a business to adapt to different types of rapid change. As I said before the pandemic, businesses were really a lot more focused on efficiencies, how to really meet demand with the bare minimum of resources required in order to keep costs as low as possible. Many of the executives that I talk to these days are questioning how to adjust that balance between efficiency and agility in this new world that we live in, where people don't show up for work on a regular basis. It's hard to hire people. There are supply chain disruptions with container ships stacked up out in the ocean, waiting to get to the port and so forth. And so there's this need to kind of rebalance between that trade-off of efficiency and agility. But there are ways that you can also shift the curve of that trade-off so that agility can be achieved while maintaining efficient use of assets. For one thing, initiatives such as SMED, or single minute exchange of dies, programs to introduce rapid changeovers help businesses increase their agility without introducing waste. But it's also the ability to sense and respond to changes in the dynamic elements of the business that enables agility. Increasing these abilities of the business to immediately identify supply chain issues, transient labor shortages, machine downtime, or quality problems, and immediately replan around those will significantly shift the trade-off curve to increase agility while maintaining efficiency. So it really helps the business not carry that excess inventory, not carry excess capacity and so forth, but still be able to respond when things deviate from the plan. And as I'm sure we've all experienced, things rarely go exactly according to plan in the first place. So what are variable costs? I assume that everybody knows what I mean by the real-time part of real-time variable cost management. So let's define what we're talking about when I discuss variable costs. when we look at kind of the breakdown of different expenses within the business, we can see that we have direct costs and indirect costs, and it's really the direct costs that we're primarily focused on here. And sorry, the red box is actually supposed to be gone. So the parts and materials, the wages and benefits, the operational expenses of those direct employees that are actually making the parts, and operational expenses of running those machines and so forth, that are those direct costs that we want to manage and be able to look at for the business. Some of the things like the factory overheads and so forth are good to know, and we may include some of those things within this analysis, but for the most part, we really want to focus on those direct costs. And the reason to focus on those is that those are much more tightly tied to the operational KPIs that we traditionally look at within manufacturing. So if we discuss that relationship for a minute between your typical operational KPIs and finance KPIs, some of those are pretty obvious. For instance, scrap. It's pretty easy to translate scrap into dollars, or at least at a simple level, it's pretty easy to translate scrap into dollars. But when you really get further into it, the impact of quality issues within your business has a wide-ranging impact on the efficiencies of the business. You might be working overtime to make up for those scrapped orders and so forth. You might be having excess supply chain costs. You might get chargebacks from your customers if you have escapes and so forth. And so very often there's a bit of a veil between these operational KPIs and the financial ramifications of those, especially when you get into something like OEE. OEE seems like, if my OEE is better, all other things being equal, I'm going to make more money as a business. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. But if I've got a non-constrained asset, if the asset is not one of the constraints in the factory and I improve the OEE, how much does that really improve the finances of a business? There's not nearly as clear of a relationship there as there is for a constrained asset. And so, when we look at this, the measures that we put in place for operations versus the measures that we have for finance, there's only one truth. I mean, there's only one factory floor, and things are happening on that factory floor, and you don't consume different amounts of materials based on an operational view of things versus a financial view of things. So there's only one elephant that's out there. But the KPIs that we use, the different measures that we use to look at the business, give us a different viewpoint of these things. And the classic blind men looking at an elephant and the different parts of it and coming to different conclusions about what they're looking at is very appropriate for this discussion within business. When we look at operational KPIs, they can often tell us a picture of what's happening within the business that's different from what finance is looking at based on the different measures that they see, and how what those long-term ramifications are for those changes in those KPIs. So by focusing just on the direct costs of the business, we remove some of that complexity, because a lot of that overhead allocation muddies the waters, to mix my metaphors here, of how you translate those operational metrics into those financial metrics. And so what we want is clear alignment between those, so that we can really look at those things that operations is used to looking at, get a clear translation into the finances of the business, and present that to management so that they can make the appropriate changes in real time, pull the right levers to do the right things, so that the business is running optimally. So I'm going to position Industry 4.0 solutions here as part of the solution to real-time variable cost management. So if you're unfamiliar with Industry 4.0, the very large with very fine print diagram over here on the right side comes from the World Economic Forum, and they've put together various groups that have helped create a definition for Industry 4.0, and kind of rating those technologies as already out in the mainstream versus things that are just maturing or emerging today. And my focus here today is really going to be on these things on the left side, and in particular the ones on the top, where we can look at things like the industrial Internet of Things, being able to collect all of that data from the shop floor, advanced analytics, machine learning and AI, augmented reality. Those are really the technologies that I'm going to be discussing today that really help us with measuring and presenting those real-time variable costs. So, the first question is, how can Industry 4.0 help? And the immediate answer is that it really helps fill all of the data gaps utilizing this Internet of Things technology. The traditional systems that we have in place on the shop floor, putting information into ERP and things like that, don't have the level of granularity that is required in order to be able to look at these real-time costs. If you only have, if you have 15 operations between credit points, you're only getting information once the materials pass that credit point, and you can backflush the remainder of the operations. And so being able to have that granularity of information where we can collect the data from every single machine along the way, look at the labor and who is performing what tasks as they go along, what materials are exactly being consumed as we do that, and so forth. Those are the things that are going to help us actually look at the true costs of running that business and being able to measure those in real time. The next thing that we're going to look at is that Industry 4.0 is going to be able to help us make decisions in real time as well. So once you have all of that information, being able to have the analytics, being able to have the machine learning support and so forth, the artificial intelligence, that's going to help you make decisions based upon all of that data. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of information that's available from these IoT solutions. How can we filter that? How can we process that information in such a way that we can present just those key pieces of information that are needed to make those decisions in real time, that lets where are the disruptions, where are the deviations from the plan? How can you sense those things and then respond to those without delays, knowing what your options are to make those adjustments when this part didn't show up, or this person didn't show up for work today, who has the skill sets to run that same process, or what other processes can be run that don't require that particular skill set, and so forth. So those are the types of things that we're going to be able to do in real time from a decision-making perspective. Another capability with the Industry 4.0 solutions that I've done extensive webinar on this topic in the past is creating a digital management operating system. How do you get everybody on the same page? And this helps address those things I talked about earlier with the elephant, where different people, depending on the metrics that they look at, might have a different view of how the business is performing. By creating this digital management operating system and having all of these kind of detailed metrics available from both an operational point of view as well as a financial point of view, we can have everybody on the same page as to how the business is performing, where the problems are, and everybody pulling on the same end of the rope. And so whether it's the operational view that's traditional within operations and looking at metrics around safety and quality, delivery, cost, inventory, manpower, environmental, those different types of categories in the KPI that fall within those categories, or whether it's really that financial view of what does all of that cost? How do I measure the cost of a safety miss? So those are the things that are very important and very critical to having that common understanding and the common approach to the business, and getting agreement on how those metrics are actually dollarized is very important for putting that management system in place. So with all of this, where do we get the data from for all of this? And if we look at where the manufacturing data actually resides, the answer is really in a lot of places. So I guarantee that in your business today, whether you're collecting it or not, there's a tremendous amount of information locked away or not locked away in the devices and the sensors that you have out on the shop floor. So machines have controllers, you have sensors in place. If not, you can easily put them in place. They're not that expensive anymore. And those are going to be collecting data in real time. And whether you capture that data and persist it or not is entirely up to you. And so you can get things like device readings, performance, diagnostic, logs, et cetera, quality information, testing information, and so on, and be able to have that information available for analysis and support, of all of these different things I've been discussing. Likewise, you probably have software in place today, whether it's a full-blown MES system or whether it's your ERP system with transactions, or just different systems that you have in place, quality systems, et cetera, that have information about those different activities that are taking place. And by tapping into those systems and not only looking at the raw data coming from the shop floor, but now connecting that into those MES systems and ERP, and even going outside of the traditional supply chain, going into your customer data, your supplier data, and so forth. Now you can enrich that information and put all of that data that's happening on the shop floor within the overall context of the business, and have that help you dollarize that data that's coming from the shop floor. And that data contextualization is actually very key. So instead of just looking at the machine sensor data and just reporting that out and saying that this machine was down for 37 minutes, well, great, but why was it down and what did that actually cost me? If I have those 37 minutes of downtime, was the machine scheduled? Was I supposed to be running something at that time? Was the operator standing there accruing salary during that time, or was the operator elsewhere? Did I have maintenance people at that machine during that time? How long were they there? Did I have engineering support come over and help get that machine back up and running? If it's a changeover, who's involved with that process and so forth? What materials are being used? What fixtures or dies or tooling and so forth am I putting in place and creating wear on as I do those things? So all of those different pieces from the shop floor itself, as well as looking at the bill of materials that's associated with that, any maintenance work orders that are out there, and the information associated with that, being able to track the genealogy and what supplier these materials came from and which lot, so that I know the exact cost that I paid for that and so forth. Being able to have operator skills that are associated with these things, so that I can know if one person doesn't show up, who else can actually do that task, or do I need to shut that task down for the day and have something else performed instead? So those are different pieces of context that come along with this information that I can utilize to not only understand what's happening on the shop floor, but to respond to those things in real time. So just putting together some closing thoughts. I introduced these up front, but I just want to emphasize them again. The reason that you would look at this real-time variable cost management is just to, first of all, understand, am I winning or am I losing for the day? And be able to understand that in real time and from a profit perspective. A business is a money machine. And rather than looking purely at those operational KPIs on the shop floor, we should be looking at the profit numbers as well, and having a realistic view and translation of those operational metrics into those financial numbers. Secondly, being able to increase the agility of the business and being able to sense and respond to those disruptions, to those deviations from the plan is what we need to do in order to shift that curve, shift that trade-off between the efficiencies and the agility that is needed in today's world to be able to handle these disruptions that are happening in real time. So that's actually it for today. Thank you very much. Short presentation this week, but if you have questions, please reach out to me at either the email address or the phone number you see there. And I look forward to talking again next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.